All right, everybody, welcome to the Future of Text. This is our Midway presentation. The subtitle of our theme today is XR to Think and to Be Creative, right? And so welcome to our presentation. All of you know us. I was concerned there might be people here that I haven't met us before, but as you all know, I'm lead PI, Frode is the co-PI, and Fabien is our prototypist for XR. So we want to thank the Sloan Foundation, Washington State University, Vancouver, and then my lab has been also a sponsor of events. I'm going to start with this video. This is a teaser video. Some of you have seen it, some of you haven't. What you're looking at is Fabien's newest.
It's not sharing yet.
We don't see your
Oh my
screen.
God.
Yeah.
I am so sorry. Let me go back.
That's how Zoom meetings are supposed to start. Brandel, what are you doing? You monster, you look amazing.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting. I look forward to everybody else being able to play.
You look so tech.
And real.
It's yeah.
All right, once again, I'm going to show you the teaser video, and this is Fabien's newest, one of his newest inventions. Although we're working with a QWERTY keyboard, which I think we'll probably ditch at some point in the future, what's really cool is being able to type right into or keyboard right into the virtual environment. So we're not outside the environment keyboarding in it. We're not bringing a digital object inside. We're actually doing this inside the space, which I think is very cool. We're very proud of that. So as our invitation states, we're showing you where we are midway. Our funding from the Sloan Foundation covers a 2-year period, as most of you know, which began in January 2024, and it's going to end this December in 2025. This means that we're at the last 6 months of our project, which is why we're putting on this presentation. While there's lots of components involved in this project, the Monday meetings, which all of you have been at, the symposium, the book, a big part of our project is to build this kind of VR space for scholarly environments, scholarly activities. And so that's been a big part of what we've been doing. And so when we were putting this grant together, we divided the years into year 1, year 2, with year 1 being reading, year 2 being authoring. So what you're looking at primarily is the authoring component the last 6 months. This presentation is going to unfold in a real specific way. Each one of the 3 of us will be giving a little talk on a theme. I'm going to be covering what it means to create scholarly text in the XR environment. Frode will then follow with a discussion about the theme of spatial knowledge and thinking space. Fabien's going to talk about experiments for experiences. Following this, we're going to move into challenges, with Fabien talking about technical challenges and me talking about intellectual cognitive challenges that we face in the direction we've been going with our project. And then we're going to be also looking at next steps, and then we'll have a formal Q&A. But know that anytime you want to say anything, I'm moderating, so drop it into the channel. We can answer questions as we go. Do not feel like you have to sit quiet and sit on your hands with questions. Okay? Questions or anything before we get started? Comments, opposing viewpoints? I see nothing. Let's see, chat, don't see anything new. Okay, all right, so let's get started. Hang on. There she goes. Okay. All right, so I'm talking about XR as an authoring space and focusing on scholarly text. And so what we started at the beginning of this 2-year period, we looked at what kind of activities, what is the case study we're going to undertake? What are the kinds of writings that scholars do, reading and writing that scholars do? And we looked at 3. First, we looked at preparing to write an academic article. Number 2, editing review articles for an academic journal. And 3, assessing a graduate seminar paper. Those are the kinds of things that we do. It's not everything an academic does, but it's a lot of it. Another 3, we settled on the first one. So looking at how we prepare to write an article. And that took us to something very small, and that's annotation. So looking at annotation. And what you're looking at here on the screen are 3 different things that we were looking at recently about annotation, from organizing data to highlighting text to brainstorming. So I'm going to take a break here and go straight into the video. And this is a video of the marking the text.
I don't think it's a problem, first of all. They were not like on top of each other. And they were like, we were still trying to help people write a manuscript in the end. So I think that a reminder that those highlights are not there to highlight, but to kind of prompt ideas for an ongoing idea.
Well, considering, I agree with that, and that's fine, we can keep it. It's just considering that the cube was supposed to be the manuscripts.
Mhm.
So here we go, highlighting.
Yeah. Refuse this, I'm afraid.
It was hard to cue that up because I don't have access to that video except on, it's a long 2-hour video. In brainstorming, putting together items. So what Fabien has done is created a bunch of cards with data on it. And so being able to take those cards and move them around and organize thought. This reminds me a lot of what we used to do with StorySpace with Bernstein's software. And that is put information in nodes and then move those nodes around in a hypertextual way. And then be able to brainstorm and create ideas out of that. Many times, scholars are looking for new material to write about, a new article, a new thing, a new way of thinking about a topic. And so this kind of brainstorming activity helps a lot. So looking at those kinds of things have been very helpful in moving us towards annotation. There's 8 steps in working from walking into the space and then actually producing an annotated text. And we're in the middle of completing those 8 steps. And we hope to have that by the end of the 2-year period. So now I'm going to stop here and turn it over to Frode. So I'm going to stop my share.
Oh, okay, my turn. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was obviously the perfect spot to go across. So the second thing to look at is, or a map/thinking space for spatial knowledge. I don't think in this group it's controversial to say that in order to think in space, we feel it might help to be able to map our knowledge somehow, and XR can radically extend this notion. And by the way, please type in questions for Dene and feel free to interrupt me. It's a short presentation. Any questions, please don't keep it a secret. By mapping, I think all of you have seen, this is how we do it in Author. It's just you define stuff, you put it on a space, and then you can see how they relate. Really, really simple stuff. What I'm going to be showing you today is very specifically such a map, which can be created anywhere. It just happens to be in our testing Author, starting life on a laptop and going to XR. Now, last week, Apple introduced the notion of liquid glass, which has very little to do with any of this, except for the fact that it made me think of my original philosophy that I developed back in the 90s when I realized this was going to be my life. So I had a look on Internet Archive to the original site from 96. And there's 2 points that I'd like to read out to you. Purposefully, the type isn't too legible because I don't have 2 screens. So these are my notes, okay? Liquid information is where you don't learn to use the computer, you learn to use the tools that happen to live in the medium of the computer. This, to me, is very much part of the promise of XR. Liquid should not be a surface effect. It should help you dive into your information. It should help you become more liquid. Secondly, liquid information, I wrote back then, is the end of isolated information. This was the era of CD-ROMs. I did not like CD-ROMs because they were information chunks that couldn't talk to other information chunks. This is very much about the importance of open information and rich metadata. Those who know me know that this was my PhD. If it's important, write what it is at the back of the thing, whatever it is. And I just want to credit my professor, Ed Leahy, who was no longer with us, who helped me think during this period, and Sarah Walton, who also helped expand this later on in London. So I think it is really important to get into the why really briefly. There's a lot of crap going on in the world right now, as is often the case in history. Fair enough. And I really want to look at Doug's sentence. Urgent, complex problems are becoming ever more urgent and ever more complex. So the future of text is not a technical mission. This is a very human mission. The basic needs and goals of a human is to be seen, to be loved, to understand their place in the world, and to understand the world for it to make sense. We believe that the promise of extended reality, XR, which is to truly extend you, the user, can help us all better express who we are, to better understand others, and to connect better. We're not doing this because it's cool to move things around in space. It is literally to extend our mental, emotional, physical capabilities to be a better species, right? That's what the work is about. So then we can go back to something very, very specific. So that was the philosophy, and here's the aim as expressed a long, long time ago, literally a month before we started the project. So in internet years, decades. So my wife filmed me at one of our favorite coffee places. I pretend to have a headset. This is before the headset vision was released. And the notion here is I'm done working on the tiny thing. I want more space. That was it. That's how this particular thing started. So now we transition to now. You've already seen this many, many times. And this is what it can do. I'm done. So I go export to XR. Now I put on my vision or whatever headset. The URL is copied across. Please don't stress about the details. I'll go through them afterwards. But the feeling is I click all these privacy things, and now I'm in the authoring in XR space. And we can do the most basic thing in the world, pick something up and move it somewhere. The feeling of that is just amazing, as I think all of you know. And we've done many tweaks, like the hand becomes transparent, so you can see what you picked up just for the moment. And also, when you let go, the text faces you just for that moment, so you have a really good control over the angle of where it should be. And of course, very, very importantly, you're now free from using that plane. You can put it behind you if you want. This can be an entire thinking space. Put whatever you want, however you want. And if you do this extra pinch, surprise, surprise, you can add a note. So that is it for this particular presentation. Fabien is going to show you a myriad of related things afterwards, but just because you're all veterans in this group today. When I show to general people, when they realize they can do a thing like that, it's mind-blowing. So we're going to try to integrate this type of environment with everything. So in here, you should be able to have links to other things. You'll be able to nest things and so on. So relatively technically, what you saw was an export from desktop software with a dialogue. In my software, you could also do it with the keyboard shortcuts because I like that, but it's up to whoever wants to implement it, whatever they want. What happens then is the map, which internally is actually a JSON, is uploaded to a server. And we happen to use a WordPress blog because I think it's quite approachable. Most people can have a WordPress blog if they want to. So instead of setting up a raw server, but it doesn't matter. Somewhere that we can know where that new version of that data is. So then what happens is for the software, the uploading software author combines that URL with a known URL of what Fabien has built in XR space. So we get a URL like this. You really shouldn't have to read my wordy slides, but this one I'm going to make even bigger. Because what happens here is this combined URL, first bit is not only where the XR software is, it's also got all kinds of cool variables in it. So it's saying the username is Q2 Visual Meta Export Map, meaning it's optimized for this. So the filters and all the goodies that Fabien has made is for this. The green bit is the URL of where the data is. A really key thing that I didn't get until Fabien explained it to me this morning in Slack was this means because the code is running locally that let's say Ken is using the same orange but a different green. We can do the same thing at the same time. We don't need a special user ID. It also means that let's say Tom and I are using exactly the same URL. We can then work on the same initial data. So this is why segmentation is so important and useful. Fabien, did I say anything wrong, or is there anything you want to add to that?
No, it's perfect. Makes a lot of sense. It's indeed a decoupling, and as you mentioned, also WordPress is one example of a CMS with its limitation, but it is a popular one. So one could imagine hosting on another CMS, whatever they're comfortable with. So it's a great show of it.
Excellent. So also important, There's also a manual local upload option where you literally drag the JSONs into the window. It's not as sexy, so I don't want to show you. There's also a local no upload option where you use a local network and all kinds of fancy things. We've been working on a ton of different ways to do this. What you saw in the video is just the smoothest, coolest. So worth mentioning, first of all, why do we use JSON? Well, we use JSON because it's a useful format, quite simply. There are no other reasons for that. And my guys who made Author did everything to conform to what Fabien had built in XR. So it's a completely open way of doing it. So we are putting more and more documentation on the website because the whole idea is you should be able to go from place to place. What Fabien is building is fantastic, but maybe you want to go somewhere else. It should be easy. We can't afford to have locked data or metadata anymore. The interactions here have been an interesting journey to get to this very, very simple interaction system that you saw. We've been dealing with controllers to direct manipulation with hands as the technologies have changed. And it's great to be able to just use our hands, but at the same time, it's not great because we don't have anything there. So whether you use a controller or not is definitely not a settled issue. And what the controller should be, we don't know. Also, I have to say, I really love the transparency effect of when you grab something, you see through your hand. It's silly. And the momentary billboarding, I know, Ken, that you do it different, but for a different use case, which is what's so exciting. And this is something that I think Dene will be touching on later. What you do in XR isn't necessarily what you expect, and that can be good or different. So next for mapping, we will look at what commands to add and how they should be executed. Very, very obvious, but this is really, really important. We've been going through all kinds of things over the last few months. Here are just some examples just to overload you with stuff. So there are many, many more avenues to explore. Fabien will show you quite a bit more. And I know it's cheesy, corny, or whatever it is, but to a very real extent, we could say that the future of how we interact with information is in our hands. And when I do say our hands, I really mean that, all of us, right? I mean, there's been such great contributions for the community, the core community here. I mean, we wouldn't have the JSON in the style that we do now if it wasn't for Mark Anderson. You know, a lot of the data stuff, a lot of the thought comes from Peter, etc. This is something we do together. It's not one single skill. And even though they couldn't make it here today, at this point, I'd like to thank both Vint and Ismail for the support over the years in getting us to this point. It's been tremendous. And I hope they will see this video and get to this point and see all the cool things that have been made. And thank you, Dene.
All right, we're going to turn this over to Fabien, who has a lot of technical information to provide us.
Yes. So yes, you saw the smoothest and coolest, and I'll show you the ugly and buggy and how it came to be like this. I don't mean it dismissively. It's because I think part of it, like, it's not that we don't know what we're doing, but there is still so much unknown that it takes a lot of explorations. And I like to think a little bit as a rhizome growing in every kind of direction. Sometimes it goes back, sometimes it is a happy mess. So I'll show you some of the mess. I will also show you, or try to show you a bit of how it's done. And it will definitely not be clear for everyone. So please do interrupt. Do either raise your virtual hand or your physical hand, or just ask directly. Don't be shy about it, please. And if you think, oh, maybe it's a bad question, there is probably someone else hesitating. They want to ask it, but they are not sure. So yeah, be that kind person and do ask directly. And a little bit of technical warning also. I had some issue with Slack on the web recently. So if I crash, I'll be back a minute later. Hopefully that's not going to happen, but yes, it might. So please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you, Dene. So one of the way to also make it safe, though, despite the ugly and buggy, has been to upload some of the tests on a video server. And because there are quite a few, 30 or so, just for the last quarter, and it's not all of them, I will relax, not go through the whole thing with you. So don't worry.
That wasn't very good. Just everyone, so you know, I tried to do what Brandel's doing, or going into the headset, So it switched and turned off the recording. So let's not do that again. Please continue, Fabien.
Yes, welcome back. So yes, there were 30 or so videos just for this quarter. I posted the link in the chat. I think also, yeah, you can sort through. You can have just the Q2 Future of Tech Sloan as a tag. This way you can also focus on just this. There are not. I'll just use one as an example. The most obscure one. So there is no voice over. So you need to infer it from the text, the name of it, of the demo. And they can be like this, literally 10 seconds, very short. So I'll just use this one as an example. I load a JSON file. And then what I can do is get one part of it specifically, so a field within a structure, basically. And then I can get its value. So in itself, I want to say it's extremely boring. Nobody should get excited by this. But what's interesting is you can think of it, and I have example here you can see on my webcam. The big picture is each of those demo, you should consider it as a Lego brick. Sometimes one you like, sometimes what you don't like, sometimes one you might want to modify, but basically you want to compose with it. So this one, for example, is not that exciting, but if you load the JSON file that refers to the list of past demos, for example, so I'll show you, I'll also show you also the main website, so that if you want to experience it right now, maybe not somebody who is recording so that they don't get popped out. So if I'm here, so that there's really space already. It's all public, so please go whenever you feel like. You don't have to rush right now. It's going to stay online. I also want to take a moment to give the link to the code because it is also all open source and public too. So I'm going to put that also in the chat. If you get confused, don't worry, just any of those links, if you go in the top left corner, for example, you go back to the code repository. And I was mentioning editing JSON. So if I go on the quarter exploration, you'll see there are more of those demos, which I also won't show you because it's all that. The one Dene showed initially, for example, is here on highlighting text. And you can see a video of it as Dene was showing, but you can also open the link to have it directly on your headset. So you can share it with a clipboard or with any other mean. And it is real and live. Namely that if you open the headset, you can try to reproduce the interaction that was in the video, but hopefully you will even think of it. If I go back to the metaphor of the Lego bricks, you might come up with a usage that we did not think of. So please do experiment. I know the video are convenient. You can just skim through, but doing the thing itself, going through the motion literally is a different experience. And if you don't have a headset, find a friend or a colleague who have one. We can help you get going. It's really a different experience. So if I go back to this is actually driven by a JSON file. So this would be available here, for example. And what I was showing in the video is the same thing, except it's available in XR in a way that is manipulable now. So that means I can now reorder in XR this JSON, which will then reorder that presentation. It's a little bit meta, but it is useful for us. For example, if we want to have the curated list of demo for Q3, not this one, but the next one, then why not use the tools we've been building for those last year or this last year and a half. So again, think of the metaphor of the brick and how they become composable. So yes, you have all those demos. You also have the demo for Q2, and they're more direct. And then you have more videos of it. So I'll just show a couple more videos that I think highlight a bit more the keyboard, for example, also that Dene was showing is here. I'll show another one of it here. Because what you can now do, for example, is not solid type in free floating form, as was shown earlier. So also, if you've never put up your headset, this is how you enter a WebXR site. So that's the keyboard. It's a different shape because the idea is you can start to swipe through. Here I'm typing in the air, in the HUD, and I can move it wherever. But then I can select a new target. So that's going to be right up there. So I append text to this. So again, in the idea of composing with bricks is that now that I have floating notes and I have a keyboard, I can select where I'm going to type. It is not something you typically do. You just click on the caret, for example. But here you need to think a little bit because you're using space. So do you type freely? Where do you type? And again, it's something I recommend to experience. Here I'm typing on the manuscript itself, which would be where we start to draft the document we're editing while in XR for academic purposes. We can go back to the last note. We can have post-it notes. We can type with multiple fingers. We can hide the keys. We can change from uppercase to lowercase. One thing that is interesting and will help me transition to the next one is we can type also in those rings, like the one you see on the top left. You can adjust the keyboard, etc. The ring you saw on the top left, what I'll try to show it again here a bit more. Here, some of you who speak JavaScript might recognize a bit. So console.log, which is basically how you output text in the console, which was also here. So you have the console in XR so that you can get instant feedback. So you can type code. So that means you can reshape the experience without leaving the headset. If you're not a developer, maybe now is the time to learn if you feel like it. I do think it's interesting. I mean, it's fascinating. But the point is you can reshape the environment. So again, if I go with this metaphor of the Lego blocks, you don't need to remove the headset to modify a Lego block. You can do it right here and there. And for the rings themselves, I'll try to find an interesting example. I think, yeah, one of my favorite is, okay, the most explicit first, I guess. So this is a ring. You have an example of text. I'm pausing, otherwise too fast. I'm going to grab the text and pull it through the ring, which is very natural. So you get audio feedback because the code, which is right there, got executed. So I changed the font size to itself. Not super exciting. But if I turn the ring, then I change the value of the font size, and then I get something a little bit more exciting. I really recommend trying this kind of interaction also because I tested it with a quite diverse, small but diverse sample of the population, let's say. It's hard not to get it. It is pretty straightforward. But then you can, basically what you're doing when you do this is you apply a function to an object. So you change the font size. This is just an example. You can have countless more. You might think it's a little bit limiting, but for example, you can do composite values. So you can, again, change the font size, or you can change something else like color. But if you take color channels, so red, green, blue, for example, then the circle or the ring in the middle, the value is the composition of those three color channels. And then you change the text based on that value. So you keep on changing it. It is not perfect, but I want to say, at least in the context of VR, blending text and code and execution applied to elements, it is rather straightforward. And I think I'll just, I won't show you another demo, but I want to show a tiny part of the process, and then I'll stop, because it's something that, okay, I'll just show one last demo. Sorry, this is, because you see a lot of text here, of course, the future of text, but there are really a lot of different kind of text. So you can have docx, you can also ODT, so text-based, let's say. You can have JSON, but you can also have tapestries. You saw the visual map from author. And this is done through filters. So we have templates. So if there is a format, a file format, you really need to work on, And all those elements are not static. You can grab them, you can imagine using them through rings, editing the content in it with the virtual keyboard. Again, the Lego blocks philosophy of it. But my point was, and I'll briefly show also in the code repository, it is through filters. We have videos dedicated on how to write your own filter, but there are quite a few now. You have, I don't know, a couple of dozens of them, some from PMWiki, some with a PDF and unpacking them, zip file, CSV. Why would one want CSV in XR? Well, I mean, a lot of research is done with this. You compile data, quantitative data. So it is a start. And the point also of doing it, as you can see also, it's rather short, is that if you don't have this, if your lab is using something much more obscure, you remix it. You use this as a template and you bring your own kind of data in it. I think that's also aligned with the philosophy of liquid information, as Frode mentioned initially. So we have a bunch of different files, but we don't have yours, and that's okay. It is all open source. There are templates. Please do try. Do watch the video if you want to have a bit more documentation on it, and ideally do a pull request or consider sharing it back, because the more of those filters that go from whatever file to something that has a shape, basically. The most basic being a text node that you can manipulate, then like it is multiplicative. It is for all of us to benefit from it. And yes, finally, the last bit that I kept for last, that is the riskiest. So if everything crashes, it will be now. It is more about WebXR per se, rather than our project, but I think it's super important in the way we work. So it is more about the process. So this is the page itself. I'm going to edit it, which is why I'm saying this is when the moment where everything breaks. I'll do the most basic change this way. It should not break much if it does break. So I'm going to modify. So in A-frame, we have this notion of the sky. And I'll make it purple, because then you see a big difference. And I'm going to refresh it. And this is it. So again, most of you, especially developers, are like, so what? This is nothing crazy. And I want to argue it is kind of nuts, because if you're in the headset right now, when you just refresh the page, you get the result right now. I'm going to cancel it because I'm pretty sure that's not fun to enjoy as a color if you're in full view. But this is really core in this process, because as I was saying initially, it's not that we don't know what we're doing, but there is so much to explore. So if I start working and compiling, and then we have the result tomorrow, in an hour, in half an hour, then our thought process is basically broken. We start to think about grocery list and whatnot. This is terrible. So the idea, and we had a couple of sessions like this, which I also encourage you to do, namely that if you do write a filter or any customization for this, you need to have a buddy or colleague or friend in the headset. Can be yourself, but can be somebody else, somebody designing, thinking, somebody coding, and then they press refresh and they tell you, Fabien, this is horrible. We should never do this again. But we do it right now, because then we know it, and then we can iterate faster. And it doesn't always work. Sometimes if you do a bit more than changing the purple color, things will break. But you can roll back, you can cancel, you can fork, you can go around, and it is having a no-build live system in terms of prototyping and exploration, I think is extremely valuable. So yeah, that's what I want to encourage. One last thing that I do it. Some of you have seen it, but not all. There is a prototype that did not show, and I will not move the webcam because that's not going to be good for everyone. But because I was showing Lego bricks, what I have off the screen is the architecture of the solution. It is quite playful. What I really enjoy with it is it's 24/7 on my physical desk. So I'll show you a tiny bit. This is the Docker image, which I can remove from there. I'll make a video dedicated to this. So if you're familiar with Docker, this is how you reproduce your system basically and let others work with it, risk-free pretty much. In here, because we are in 3D, we have the 3GS axis, so XYZ with the different matching colors. This is you all watching the presentation, having ideas and feedback. What's blue is the back end, what's yellow is the front end, hence why you have the axis helper. The different bricks representing the blocks as a different part of the prototype, and the kind of proof that it's work, let's say, the post-it notes. So all those ongoing ideas that are not yet implemented are there. So if you work in software, it is okay. Lego, you can rebuild it. Hopefully you get a better idea. And so those are the, this is for Q3. You all know it after. So it is fun. First of all, I really enjoy it. It is fun. It is useful because, again, it's 24/7 on your desk. So it means, actually, I was discussing with a friend yesterday. He's the one who gave me, when I showed him the idea for presenting the Docker images, the containers too, because it doesn't run just on this, let's say, Lego base plate. You have more abstraction from it. So it is really useful for me. Yes, it is haptic indeed. It makes sound also if you drop some of it on the floor, but that's okay. It costs nothing. And something that is a little bit crazier, I guess, is we have a version of it that works in augmented reality. So it means when you look at it, you have those post-its that are actually Git issues, and you can also pull. So this is WebDAV, those little blue blocks, let's say. Those are the filters and the converters. So it means it is not the physical model is live, but without the data. If you look at it through the headset, then you have it live with the data. So you give new affordances basically while making it manipulable. So this is typically something that wasn't planned, but I think is at the very least very interesting. I cannot say right now is it sufficiently efficient, productive, creative. But yes, I think this is a left field kind of exploration that is quite interesting. Voilà. Thank you.
Frode has a comment he wants to make. Frode, did you want to?
I do. Two comments briefly. First one, the hardest thing to do working with Fabien is to get him to remove things. He makes so much stuff, so many versions. It's so brilliant. So when we get together, it's often, okay, this is great. Now I don't need that. Can you hide that? Well, it's here for this reason. So it's an absolute joy to do that. And then the second comment, which was going to come later, but Fabien, you brought up the Lego, which is so useful. One of the things we do want to do in the future is more physical, real world stuff. Everything from the user being able to use a table if they want or not, to use walls if they want to or not, to use pens, to use Lego. I'm not sure if Lego necessarily is my personal thing, but to have a shape in a real physical world that means something virtually is very, very exciting. So I just wanted to join Dene and really saying thank you to Fabien and then joyfully complain about too much stuff.
Fabien, your response.
Yeah, I made a quick response in the form of a URL, which is a URL to manage other URLs. Because indeed, it is open source, but not everybody is a developer. So some of the things we did try also to set up is, and as actually Frode, you also gave as an example about the map and using different kind of data on different backend with different CMSs is a lot of those customization. You don't need to touch the code. Like I changed the sky color to purple to show you that it's live and you get the result right now, literally now. But if you're not a developer, you can also have some examples of changing the sky color to not purple. So it also means like if Fabien doesn't understand or can or whatnot, a lot of the things can be hidden, scaled, modified, rotated, etc. From there. And also it means you don't even have to push your code. Let's imagine you do have a friend who loves purple. Give them that URL, they can customize it. You have the experience in purple, they have it in blue or dark gray or whatever you want. It also goes a lot further than this because you can have a 3D model in the background. We show uniform 3D background here because we found that it was good to focus, but for some people, there is the right quote unquote amount of noise. They might want a castle or whatever. You have the GLB, so the 3D model as a URL parameter. You change that. And again, you change this without pushing code. It is all about letting whoever wants to customize it however they want to. So there is an aspect to it. It is not, I apologize for the documentation being extremely sparse, which is an euphemism, but it is kind of there. So you can have examples and use those examples to do a lot of customization. Again, in the sense that you might have an idea on the spot, and I definitely don't want you to call me at 3 a.m. on a Saturday night. Do your thing. You don't have to have a heavy, if you don't know what Docker is, use those examples to change it. So a lot of it is indeed to try to help customize because there are so many serendipitous ideas and different tastes. It's a lot of personal, it is a literal experience. And because it's an experience, you must be able to change it the way you want it, you feel, etc. So yeah, there are quite a few ways to customize it this way.
I mean, did you want to cover some of the technical challenges that we had, or you kind of embedded them in your talk? Did you want to call them out at the end here and just remind everybody what we struggled with?
Yes, actually, I'll also be briefer than when I said I would be brief and then wasn't, I guess. So actually, it's a perfect segue because one of the I want to say challenge, but also beauty is we use WebXR, which is again, it's amazing. I'm a fan, of course. Obviously, I'm biased, but you get a URL and then you get like a virtual world. It is nuts. And if you don't have a VR headset, you can still experience it somehow. It is not the same, but you can still go through. One quick also demo I will not show, but I encourage you to check is we have a virtual headset so that we can do some testing without having the headset on. And then you have virtual hands that then grab objects and pull them through rings and all that. So that means we can do some kind of automated testing. I think it's relatively new. It's definitely convenient. Honestly, developing on the headset, putting it on and off sometimes can be a pain. So having ways to do this. Also, if somebody you send that to a friend or colleague, they don't have a headset, what are they going to do? So you can still do customization, but with the automated testing. So if they like the test with the purple sky or whatever, they can do this because we take URL as first-class citizens. The example there that I put in the chat, but there is so much done through URLs. We think of it like as long strings of meaningless text in the browser, but it's powerful. The concept has been with us for decades now. It works basically. That also means it's hard because if once you give a URL, people expect that URL to keep on working. If I give this URL to you today, in 3 months, you're like, hey, why is it not working? So that's the two sides of the same coin is that now that you get a prototype in the wild, you must kind of maintain it. So it also goes back to Frode the comment earlier is how do we do this? Like, how do we keep the flexibility of exploration, but also letting people have the time to explore it? So yes, I think there were 2 hands up. Maybe I subbed there.
Yeah, there's Frode, and then Ken has his hand up. Frode?
I think Ken was first, so I'm happy to wait a second.
Okay, Ken.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't able to find the icon to show that. Yeah, I had a question, and I just want to pick your brain a bit on this one, but it's also a bit more of a general VR or spatial problem, I think. But what happens a lot is that you have all the items around you, and you have like notes and text and a keyboard there, and it sometimes looks a bit chaotic. It might feel a bit chaotic, and this is a bit related to you probably also wanting to do a lot of things in one, and there's a prototype, of course, and I think it's a more general problem, right? That in I saw that in a lot of VR applications that also with the Apple Vision Pro that just it feels like cluttered. Everything is everywhere, and I wonder if this is if you have any thoughts on this and in your experience, and it's probably not something that or it's probably something that will be challenging for a lot of people over years. But to address this, but I think it might be like really a core thing, especially if you're thinking of authoring and writing documents and all and having a lot of notes around.
Can I respond to that, Ken? I think it's interesting you asked that question because if you come to my house, I'm pretty anal retentive about things being neat and tidy. Nothing's ever out of place for more than 2 seconds. But I go into someone else's house and they got things everywhere, right? I don't think we can control clutter. People are going to find ways to clutter. That could be a human, predicament for some folks. There's other people that want things organized. And I love the way that Fabien has organized the environment so that you do see these kind of organizational nodal experience, nodal objects. Here's the manuscript. Here's the different notes that you can choose from. Here's the code over here. And you can get familiar. I'm going to talk about familiarity in just a minute, but this idea that you can organize your space in a way that you can handle clutter if you don't like clutter. But I suspect I'm going to walk in someone's knowledge space and it's going to be a mess.
I guess I'm also more on the cluttered side personally, but at least in the digital world, it's all in one screen, right? So it's that's also an opportunity, of course, that you have all the space now. But yeah, just wonder what your experiences are.
One exploration we did on this, also with the bibliography from Mark's JSON file, was basically be able to query the different items of the dataset. So that means, for example, sorting by year, or that means only taking the paper from a specified author, or taking the same or papers from the similar author as this one. And the rings are kind of trying to explore this, but I think the rings, for example, this is what we use for that, is just the interface. It means conceptually the person has to understand what sorting is, for example. And I think a lot of those still do work, like sorting or hiding or showing information. The one thing that was interesting on that front is I think decluttering in VR or in XR benefits from provenance. So as long as you keep the source of the data and you can get the metadata out of it, it's a little bit like have the book on my desk, but then if I have at least the ISBN or some kind of ways to know that what is related to that book, then I have the metadata to process it. And it means all the books that are there, for example, I can have the same kind of filter. So as long as you don't have just the visual of the object in space, but provenance and at least the metadata related to it, it doesn't mean everything is organized instantly, but at least you can organize a lot of things at once, the same way that one would do, let's say, digitally. So it's a kind of the blend between the direct manipulation and the concept behind how to manipulate information through things people are hopefully used to, like you do in a normal digital catalog.
But one more comment, and then we'll get on to the rest of this because we're getting close to 9:30.
Yeah, exactly. Two things. On the clutter thing, I'm so glad that where did you go? Where's Peter? There he is. You moved on my screen. Peter has really been highlighting the importance of memory palaces. And of course, in XR, you can have as many as you want, and you can change them as much as you want. And I agree with what Mark was saying. Clutter is subjective. It is intensely subjective, and there's a lot of psychology there of what is a mess, what is a decision, what is random, what couldn't you care about. And as we talked about 2 weeks ago, compression and focus and all of these aspects will be becoming more and more important because we can fill it up easily. But we have to be able to make those choices. So the future research on what commands to have and how to have them is really, really important. But then there was the other point referring earlier to the issue of the URL changing, which is so important because self-hosting can be one thing. You take everything in a package from what Fabien has done, for instance, not easy now, but conceptually at least easy. And it really highlights the importance of this stuff being open. Just to close this point, when Mark, what was Doug's coder's name? Tell me when you remember. When NLS was first done, they had to code every single thing, how to write every single character. It was a mess. Now I can tell my programmers do this, and we have not Bill English. Anyway, I'll think of it in a second. Now I can tell my programmers do this thing to bring in a world-class LLM, and they can just do it, right? So there is a completely different openness. Jeff Rulifson was his name, right? The way he wrote the original NLS, it crashed during the 68 demo and rebooted in one single frame of film. We don't need that level of genius anymore. We can make these things truly open because the libraries that support things. So the architecture that Fabien has done is truly groundbreaking and vital for further innovation. Anyway, that was it. And now we're on to the next stage. Dene, thank you.
I'm going to share my screen with everybody. There we go. All right. So I'm going to talk about the cognitive challenges, right? I'm going to talk about the intellectual cognitive issues. Fabien's already talked about the technical issues. So I actually see them in three different areas, right? First, transitioning between physical and virtual space. Number two, adapting to the virtual space that does not necessarily follow the laws of the physical world. And three, what I call code switching, which may result when you're inside the space. And so we're accustomed to intermediate spaces in the physical world. As you can see the image here, a vestibule. We also have porticos, entryways that lead us to the spaces we want to get to, right? They're just those intermediate spaces that we have to go through in order to get where we want. We don't jump out of our car straight into the living room. Rather, we move from the car, right? The driveway, the floor, the door, the entry hall, and then we undertake a series of activities to get to that destination. We have to open and close the door of the car. We have to walk to the house, enter the house. We drop our keys onto the table potentially, right? And then we do the thing we want to do. In XR, there are good examples of environments that also try to achieve a similar transitional moment. You see an image here of Supernatural. And so I've been playing for the past 6 months Supernatural VR fitness, doing a lot of VR boxing and kickboxing. And what I like about the environment is the user dons their headsets. I put my Meta 3 on, right? And a musical theme starts to play. It's dark, the theme starts to play, and particles swirl around me. And here's an image of the particles. And then a final chord hits, is sounded, and then the interface opens up. But even then, when I select a program, I get a 3D coach who's life-size, facing me, and who talks to me and greets me. They have a name, we have an interaction, right? It feels real. And then we're also located in a geographical location that seems familiar. So once again, the notion of familiarity. And we're standing in like Machu Picchu or a mountain lake in the Tetons or in front of the pyramids of Giza. So we're not jolted from the virtual world, right? And from the physical world into the virtual world, but rather transition into it. And that's an important part. Likewise, we've been working on this. I think the Apple Vision Pro has been genius in the way it handles transitions. I'm going to see if I can get this started for us. You know, just being able to hit spaces and move into things, confirm your boundaries. I mean, all of this helps us get into the space we're trying to get into, right? We're not just thrown into that space. We're actually moving into it in a mindful way. Let me get back to my slideshow. So once you're there, the user might find features of the environment that don't align with the physical world because the VR space does not have to follow the laws of VR. The physical world. It may instead exhibit non-Euclidean characteristics. And some time ago, I think in January, Fabien and I talked about non-Euclidean design. So things like force, velocity, acceleration, action and reaction, mass, scale. These are just a few of the ways the environment may be different in the VR space. Let me go back here again. And this is from year one. You can see we're going to enter into the space. This is from our earlier experience that Andrew helped to build. And we selected from the menu using a pointer, which we've gotten rid of since then. And then we see this environment. What's interesting is that when we stand in this environment, there's no floor. And this document goes all the way down to way below us, and can be way on top, way ahead of us, right above us. And so we're not standing on a surface. And so users also may recognize the fact they're not looking at an 8.5, 11 piece of paper anymore. And that is very different, right, from the physical world. So there's strange behaviors that happen. Hovering, things hover around you. You're able to move things, pinch things, move them out different places. And so it's unfamiliar. We're able to pick words and phrases, as you saw, with our fingers and move them to different places in the environment. So that's one of the challenges.
I have to finish writing this paper.
Hang on
I'm
a second.
swamped. Just do Grammarly. It's free.
Love ads.
And it help with what?
There we go. So we have boundless space, as this image shows you, and we have the ability to move things around. So very strange behaviors. Let me go back. So another challenge that makes the shift from the physical space to the virtual world can be described as code switching, which is here, right? Code switching is a term that was suggested by Roman Jakobson back in 1953, which talks about language shifts. Many of us speak multiple languages. We know that when we're in one language talking, we may use a word from the previous language or our native tongue and mix it up, right? And we're going back and forth. If I'm speaking to someone in French and shift back to English, or I might use words in Czech that I don't want to use in English, but I'm using them because they're in my memory. This kind of code switching happens in VR as well. And anytime you are in the VR environment and you're trying to do something that you do in the physical world in that environment, and you realize you cannot do it, right? You cannot function in the way that it expects you to in that environment. So that switching back and forth and having to bring in the physical into the virtual and the virtual into the physical. I mean, any one of us has touched the screen, trying to swipe my desktop screen, right? I've been playing on my iPad and then I try to swipe the screen of the desktop. That's code switching, right, in this kind of space. And so we've done this many, many times, and it causes cognitive overload, frustration, and many times fatigue, right? So just to complete my thought, reading and authoring in XR can be very disorienting for people, right? Especially if they're new to the environment. Sometimes they can't manage the experience at all. And so balancing the production of a VR space that enables us to experience something new and at the same time enlivening, but also encourages us to think different, to quote from Apple. At the same time, remains a sense of familiarity. It's one of the challenges we've been facing. So a lot of things we're showing to you is what we call COIC in my program, clear only if known. So those of us who have been coming every Monday and watching Fabien give his presentations, we're familiar with seeing that environment, but bringing in somebody new to this project, it might be very strange for them and they may not understand, especially if they don't understand JSON or they never have been in a VR environment before. If you spend any time at all in a headset, whether it's a Quest 3 or 2 or an Apple Vision Pro, you'll see a lot of apps and experiences, and they're all generally aimed at two categories, and that's entertainment and productivity. The idea we've got to be productive, we've got to have entertainment, our sports, our films, everything is organized into these areas. And so what is interesting from my perspective is taking us out of those two categories and fomenting a new one, and that's creativity. Like, what can we do? How can VR be used to be creative? We see the VR space as an opportunity to be creative and for users to be pushed beyond outside the mundane and in the everyday aspect of life and into something that can spark new ideas and ways of seeing and experiencing things. I shared with the group a couple of weeks ago the New York Times Creativity Challenge, which reported that research links creativity to happiness and well-being. To be able to be creative brings joy, right? And it also went on to say that older adults, and I'm happen to be in that category of people, that engage in creative outlets show less cognitive decline. So I spend a lot of time in the headset these days. But in essence, reading and authoring in XR for us, as we're discovering in this project, is really not about being a productive academic. It's really about focusing on providing opportunities to enhance users' ability to be creative. And I'll stop with that share. Okay. see,
Oh.
there's comments here, flip side.
Oh, my camera went.
Yeah, Tom, I have to say, when I was a child, I spoke Czech in the house, right? And there were 7 Czech families in my little town in Texas. And I didn't know that there was a word for the belly button other than pupek, which is the Czech word for it. And so my friends were talking about their innies and outies. And I used the word pupek, and they had no idea what I was talking about. And I didn't know what word they were using. I just know they were pointing at this thing on their belly. And so I learned from them that it was called a belly button. But that kind of aha moment, right? Where you go, oh wow, that's not what's supposed to be used, right? That's different. Yeah, cognitive decline. I don't know, Peter. I'm starting to forget a few things here and there. But yeah, so future directions. I know, and there's lots of things we're doing in this project, a lot of things that can go. One thing that we're doing in the lab with Andrew is building out objects and interactivity and creative, artistic aspects. That's my interest, is the artistic expression. And I know that other ones of you have seen other directions, so we can talk about that. Hands up, Frode.
It's so, obviously you presented this to me before several times, and I'm so happy every time you talk about it because, well, I come from an arts background, Chelsea School of Art and all of that. Maybe I'm biased, but I do think that as we're learning more what LLMs and AI really is in different ways now, it's tremendously powerful and useful, but creative, it is not. You know, it's pattern matching, it's doing things, it's definitely going to help us do all kinds of things, but the human needs to be extended. Writing has been extending us for 5,000 odd years. And then we went from these beautiful big scrolls into this. I mean, I remember the first Macintosh. Do you also have the same experience? 9 inches of golden promise. But how insane is it to work in that? And now, there it is. And now, I mean, thank you, Dene. That was useful on so many levels because as you move the camera, we see your whole space, right? So now we have the entire space to work in, plus infinite space. It is so incredible to be working in this community, to not only have California-style coffees with some of you and discuss saving the world, but to actually build stuff that extends our hands or our minds. I mean, I wish, I mentioned Doug many times, but I mentioned him today. I wish he was alive to see this. You know, this goes beyond his wildest imagination, wildest dreams, the potential. And, you know, thank God we're working with Fabien, who is explosively creative at building things and incredibly self-directed, which is wonderful. So yeah, it's exciting, but I really, really want to do what I say almost every single presentation. We really want more from you guys. Okay, for me as kind of an editor of the book, of course I want articles from you. But even if it's a little thing, right, it's so worthwhile to help us with a little different thought here. It's like, hang on, what was that nonsense? You know, if we go echo chamber, it's not going to be anything. I mean, look at Dene and me. We come from very different academic perspectives. You know, even today, last minute, we went through our slides and changed things because of the other person. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you to everyone, and please keep screaming and shouting and singing. Jonathan.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. Since you're asking for feedback, yeah, I mean, amazing presentations. In all of these kind of discussions, people are making their own, effectively making their own spaces by arranging things semantically in whatever way suits the subject matter. And something which doesn't seem to be very often discussed is whether there are or should be standardized semantic spaces that people could get used to. I mean, there are some obvious ones like, you know, you use for sorting files by alphabetical order or by date or something like that. But I think if there is scope for standardized spaces, then it would make these spaces much, much more familiar when you're putting large numbers of objects with different meanings or articles or whatever they are into a new space. Then you would know roughly how they're arranged. And I just wonder if anyone has looked into that very much. I don't know. I mean, old style thesauruses used to be used to have used to be arranged by topic, whereas these days they tend to be arranged by I think alphabetically. They used to have a kind of index at the start, which arranged all human knowledge in categories and subcategories and so on, like a library cataloging system. I know of various semantic spaces for specific topics, like for flavors. There's a famous best-selling recipe book certainly in the UK called The Flavor Thesaurus that came out a few years ago, which arranged recipes into 100 flavors, and this was in a flavor circle in the
That's cool.
front cover. And if that sounds arbitrary, when you see it, it's really impressive. It's not arbitrary. There's a gradation of these 100 flavors, and the recipes are sorted by pairs of flavors. And for the purposes of the book, apparently the author tried all 5,000 or so pairs of flavors and had recipes and for the combinations which actually work. So that's one very specific space. But I just wonder if generally the idea of some standardized space or spaces appeals, and if it has been investigated.
I just want to really quickly say that I'm in the Quest all the time because I'm playing the VR fitness, right? Or I'm playing Beat Saber. And then I get into the Apple Vision Pro for my research. So I go back and forth between the two. And I find that as much as I like being able to take the MetaQuest off my head and put it on someone else's, and there's not any kind of break in the structure, the problem is if they're not used to the environment, it's hard for them. What the Apple Vision Pro does, is it requires a series of steps. And while that might be time consuming, it also lets people get used to that environment. So once again, it helps with the adaption part that I was talking about. And so when I put the Quest on, it's on. And wherever I left off last time, it's there, right? That's not how the Apple works. It always wants me to log in and move through a series of steps. So I think there's some advantages to that. Mark?
Well, I'll take Frode's prompt. And this isn't a counter to what Jonathan was saying, but I think one of the things we could say is that I don't think we've been avoiding sort of standardized spaces. An observation I would say from sitting on the side of this is that we've found ourselves moving more and more fruitfully into essentially what's information triage. I can organize things quite easily on my desk. I can organize things quite easily on a screen. But I can do things in the sort of XR space, this more plastic space, that I might struggle to do elsewhere. So the two aren't counter. And I think one other aspect that I think is sort of actually lurking in what's been said here as well is that some of the things that are involved in doing that organization turn out to be just a little bit harder than we thought in XR. Now, the equipment will improve, things will get sharper and things. But by the same token, we talked a lot about all the degrees of freedom, but actually just unambiguously signaling what you do with a gesture, given that we signal with our hands all the time, and our human brains just cope with those multiple channels of communication quite easily, it is another problem. So ironically, the order that you quite rightly have flagged up is perhaps somewhat hard to achieve. And so it's not something we've pushed into, because in other words, it's sort of quite hard to do, and maybe it isn't the most pressing thing that we need. The other point being that it's been touched on as well is the sort of the clutter thing, that actually that part of the thing of the memory palace is, as long as it makes sense to you, it doesn't matter how cluttered it is. So again, it goes back to a notion of what order is, but I would hasten to add, I hope nothing I've said runs counter to your point about the value of having spaces with a common meaning, because that is indeed a useful thing. And I'll stop there. Thanks.
We have Frode, Ken, and then Brandel, you had your hand up. Yeah, there we go.
I'm going to be super quick to give to Ken and Brandel, but Jonathan, with all loving respect, absolutely not under any circumstances whatsoever. In this experimental community, Brandel and Ken are coming up, and Apple needs to do it for commercial reasons to help the onboarding. But I really hope that our community can experiment with all kinds of weird stuff. And the more contradictory, the better. I think we're at a phase now we absolutely have to think. Think again, get confused, and think again. And I'm really, really worried about things settling too early. So with lots of love and respect, disagree on this one. Over to you, Ken.
Okay, several things. One thing that I noticed, I loved all the presentations and the work people have done, and I'm very impressed and delighted. And also, everything that our lab does, everything we do with this is in video pass-through mixed reality, because that's our focus is, trying to eventually just get to the glasses. We just want to get to the point where you put these things on and everyone forgets about it. And we're trying to figure out what that's like. So that's a slightly different goal. But that means, and also I do Supernatural as well. I was doing Supernatural this morning to 20-something minutes to Disney classics. I still have a spoonful of sugar in my head, it's great, very fit. But on these things are great. But one thing I wanted to point out is that a lot of decisions, we spent many years working in VR because we didn't have video pass-through. A lot of decisions are really different if you're optimizing for VR or for XR. I wrote a whole system for being able to have a keyboard, typing in the virtual world, and then my console, my JavaScript, and I never use it because I just open up my MacBook and type on my physical keyboard because I'm still here in the physical world, and that's faster for me to do development. And I think it's not like one is right and one is wrong. I did feel as though, Frode, that very short video you showed that your wife took of you and the screen came up, one thing I noticed right away is that was transparent. And the whole idea of that visualization was it did not in any way interfere with your ability to be in that coffee shop. And then the very next thing you showed, that screen was pretty opaque. So I kind of feel as though we need to keep in mind that there are these different goals, and it's not like one's right and one's wrong, but they're not the same.
Yeah. I want to just mention what I'm interested in is born digital virtual objects, Ken, which is a category that has a lot of potential, right? What does it mean for something to be born virtual as opposed to born digital, right?
Yeah, and what I and in fact what I find, so I should put my hand down, I'm sorry. What I find is that we are not ending up focusing on things that look like they would be in the real world. We end up focusing on things that look like information objects and let the world be the real world, but they annotate the real world. So we've been moving away from realistic 3D computer graphics, moving toward better rendering of lines of text, of things that you would think of as just pure, that tell you they're pure information objects.
Randall?
I really like, Ken, that you said annotation. I've often told people that augmented reality is often just as well described as annotated reality and much less sexy, and it's kind of the better handle for it in many regards. But back, Jonathan, to your question, I think it is a good thing to do. I think one of the important questions we need to ask as we are developing. So I'm not representing anybody other than my own views here, but I am conscious of the fact that there are trust, safety, and privacy issues related to who gets to do what and when, and what are the appropriate ways of presenting certain kinds of modalities, and what is kind of divulged as a consequence. And so, I say WebXR is an amazing prototyping platform, experimentation and exploration, but I think that the world would probably not be a better place for it becoming the sort of the foundational technology for most web discourse to be engaged with it. And that is why I made the HTML model element. That's why I made web backdrops as an alternative, which is declarative and allows the sort of the trust basis of the traditional web to be the sort of the main kind of determining factor. But back to that question of like organizing and aligning things. I think from a prototyping perspective, it's absolutely appropriate for us and anybody else in a prototyping capacity to look at how we might sort of arrange and array things such that we can kind of align them. And at the same time, be aware of the fact that with more information, you can do a lot more to kind of infer intent and priorities and things like that. Like one of the things that I'm really interested in within the context of AI, to the extent I'm interested in it at all, is the ability for people to have a layer above applications in which this AI stuff is working, so that it has the ability to make recommendations or make observations that sit across these different application boundaries. And I think that's a really valuable thing, but it comes at a tremendous cost in terms of how dangerous it is for that to be sort of managed or brokered elsewhere or outside. So I I really like the idea of organization. I really like the idea of structuring those things. I think it's really important for us to be able to kind of evaluate what must this thing know? What kind of trust basis is it permitted to operate on in order for us to be able to derive these benefits? And I think that's, there are not hard and fast rules there, but I think it's an important part of the calculus for people to be able to kind of understand the costs and benefits that might go into this thing being able to be responsible for ordering in these ways. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you, Brandel. Frode and Fabien.
I just wanted to say thank you, Brandel, for representing that perspective here, but I would also urge the community to utterly ignore that aspect as well, both at the same time, because I feel that the point of this project, both the Future of Text in general and Sloan right now, is to really expand our potential. So the more stuff that kind of doesn't make sense now, I think is really, really important. There's something kind of dangerous, because the way that I look at this is we look back in history to be inspired. And I see you nodding, Brandel, which is lovely. I want people in 50 years to look back at what we publish now in terms of code and ideas and rethink things, because the GUI, Part GUI and all of that stuff, locked down way too early, right? So many things that didn't happen. Right now, I want to go into an XR thing and, just like Dene outlined, have all the problems she outlined as part of the experiment, and then have something else that is mundane. So let's just keep splattering things all over the world. All over the world, there you go, all over the walls, virtual walls. Thank you.
So,
Jonathan, want to respond to that before Fabien?
Yeah.
Sorry, we're back. Yeah. Maybe I should just to it may have sounded like I was putting forward a slightly extreme position that you might want to sort large amounts of objects in according to one principle or one axis or something like that. And of course, there are many scenarios in which you do want to do that. But okay, here's a subtler way of putting it. When I am arranging files on my desktop, or as I used to do on my computer desktop, which I don't do very much these days, and it seems to me that a lot of these VR demos are a similar thing in 3D with much more space. And you're arranging things, as Frode's been saying, you might want to do it in a completely intuitive, creative, individual, of the moment way. So you put something over here and try putting something over there, and so on. You might group things in different ways and so on, for whatever purpose. Even that has a principle behind it, because you are in the moment deciding you want something to go there and you want something to go there. And even though that is not something that's going to come preloaded into some system, that is an organizing principle which is in your head and can be perhaps extrapolated by AI or something from what you're doing. And surely there are big uses for this, because when more, whatever it is, documents or information or something comes in, it could be put by default in those places, no matter how wacky.
Hang on, Jonathan, just hold on a second. I'll let you continue, but Dene's leaving.
Oh, sorry.
She has to go to campus, but I just want to really briefly, while Dene's still here, we're not going to Egypt, for those of you who know that. Not everyone's been told. The grand new museum will not be open due to things happening in the region. So we will be hosting the next Future of Text in London, most likely at the Royal Society Ismail is arranging that too. It'll be on the normal date at the end. Was it Dene 24th, 25th, something like that? Sorry, you're muted.
It's a Friday of Thanksgiving week.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. You'll get a notice from everybody. From us.
You will. And thank you so much, Dene. I'll see you later. I'll just
thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye.
So Jonathan, hold that thought. Coming back to you, just wanted to say regarding the event here, it'll be the normal sort of thing, an official one day and then a more casual another day. We'll have a dinner. So all of you here are obviously core in the community. If you want to contribute an article, contribute whatever you want, let's talk about it. Anyway, I interrupted you, Jonathan. Please continue.
Yeah, so I'll wrap up. I mean, maybe the point is a bit off topic. I don't know, but there is an organizing principle to what you're doing. You know what it is, even if it seems very spontaneous to you. And I was just making the point that in the modern era, that could be done for you, or you could have help in your very creative arrangements of things automatically. And so the idea that sorting, as we might call it, is a mundane thing is true if we were doing it in the 80s way, but if we do it in the 2020s way, it could be anything.
And please write an article on this, Jonathan. Thank you. Over to Fabien.
Yeah, it's a constant struggle during the entire project, namely that if we do something, and I'm going to really paraphrase it from from far away, but it's if we do something so crazy that people don't get it, like even a single person doesn't understand it, it's hard to go forward. If though we do like slick onboarding or define standard and specification that everybody agrees on it, then we are going to do very little that is new. So it is a kind of balance between the two, that it has to be crazy enough to be novel and potentially useful, has to be at least usable by at least one person so that that person gets new ideas. But the balance is always very much a struggle. And some of the documentation there that was shared is, and I want to thank you all for being there, because what we're sharing you is weird. At least we hope so. We hope there are a couple of things that are like, what is it that doesn't even make sense? But few are like, oh yeah, maybe there is something there that I haven't considered before. If there is a single one of those moments for any of you or all of you, this is wonderful. But yes, the more people do actually get it, the more ideas we can get. But if everybody gets it, it's probably super boring. I mean, it's not. It is something that has been seen and done before. So how to do this? And it's a lot of, I don't want to say tension, it's not the right word, but it is, I guess, a lot of tension within the team through presentation like this, how to actually make it even understandable. I don't mean reliable in terms of code, but really how to do this. And I don't have any suggestion for this. My perspective is, as long as it's interesting, and there's at least a single person that can go from it and hopefully help others to get it, then it's good enough. Like it is a step in that direction.
We will go a few minutes over because there's other people, but Fabien, Mark, let me jump in front. Thank you, Mark. Fabien, I have an answer to that. And the answer is, don't worry about it. It literally is my job, right? So the brief presentation that I did today, where I asked you to get rid of things until there was almost nothing in the space, it is designed to do that. It is designed to get people in, they move stuff about, and that's it, and it's amazing. So we really have to expand and have fun. We can always add something to the basic ones, but I really don't think we should think product. We shouldn't think polish. We shouldn't think shipping. We shouldn't think introduction. There's so many things happening now to introduce people to VR. It's not our job. Our job is for someone to put on the headset and go, that makes no sense, but I trust these guys. Oh, maybe this and that. You know, this is nothing for us to worry about. We've reached that threshold. What was done last year and what you've done this year, Fabien, it's solved. Sloan should be happy. It's done, right? We can hand this in and just have a holiday, but we don't want to do that. Now we just come up with stupid, pardon my French, some stupid shit. Yeah, lazy days, and see how it goes. And, you know, we have Ken Perlin here for crying out loud. Reality you know, these are things going around. And then we have Ken over there doing interactions with, you know, don't worry about being usable. Right, Mark, thank you, sorry.
I'll be very brief. It's really just sort of to agree with Jonathan. I mean, I called with you on the sorting, and I think it was one of the things we were nibbling at just last week, talking about spatial hypertext. I mean, the challenge, the desire for us at the moment is to use all the new toys like sort of AI to sort this stuff for us. The reality is the sort of clever sorting we want to do is the emergent structures that we're seeing. So the machine can't sort something until you've created the pattern for it to see. So that is one of the sort of challenges, and one of the things we've already discovered is, and Fabien was showing the sort of, we started thinking, we put a whole lot of information, for instance, into the space. Well, how would we sort it? How would we query it? Because we probably don't want to be sitting typing sort of structured language queries, you know, in to do that. Are there easier, more intuitive ways? And one of the things that I've taken from some years of sort of using spatial hypertext is counterintuitive, the less is more. So strip away as much as you can. Abstraction helps you a lot. Knowing that the blue things and the green things are different is a lot easier to work with than trying to read all the labels attached to them. Because if you're thinking about difference, if you're sorting, what you want to maximize is the thing you're sorting on. All the other stuff is still there. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's all held in the environment. Again, Fabien made that point that, you know, we don't have to surface all the information all the time. It's there. It's way behind the curtain. So we can afford to be far less literal in our presentation, and we can then dial up the thing that allows us to concentrate on the sort of axis of our sort. So I think it's working towards what you're alluding to. It's just giving us a few unexpected challenges along the way.
Thank you for doing elephant ears there, Fabien. I got your signal. The action mark is really, really important, because if it doesn't go through the human brain is not involved, and you won't figure it out. It's like, it is really, really important. But of course, there will be some level of augmentation in what you do. There is no such thing as direct manipulation in any digital system, even though it may feel like it. So even a simple thing like select all the other items that share this characteristic with this thing. Is the system helping you that your brain is doing the decision making? So to find the level of decision making that you do, but to extend it in a useful degree, which most often should be individual things because of the process. I completely agree with you, but I can also imagine I'm completely stuck. Turn this into a bloody Jackson Pollock or something. Just something way off, just to help you get a different perspective. So that's what I'm saying. Let's just throw all kinds of things around. Fabien, and then I think we need to close.
Then very anecdotally, but in that train of thought, is one example of a demo for Q1 actually was when we dropped text snippets or any element, and it would snap to the closest panel, and the reaction of people testing it was like, oh, it kind of extended the process I was going to do. It's like that tiny step. Technically, it's not necessarily complicated, but it's like, oh, I don't have to go all the way to the one-on-one interaction to put it on the panel. Literally, it is going there on its own, kind of. I did not record what people actually said word for word, but that was kind of the idea. And it is a kind of like superpower. And I think this is, again, to also echo what Dene's point, what she was saying initially, that it is another form of tension we have. We can actually do one-on-one mapping. When you take a piece of text, you put it there. It is actually already in itself great, but we can do so much more, and we can do non-Euclidean and all that. But then we need to, how this superpower is just within that space, need to be learned. So it is, I think, the interesting part to explore, basically.
And that, thank you for allowing two things to come together. The whole object-oriented drawing thing that Ken mentioned earlier, I think, is really, really fascinating. One thing that, as a visual artist background person, is, you know, we have fonts, right? We do not have fonts for drawings. So most of the time, the drawings will look either really, really bad, really liney, or you have to have someone amazingly good to do the drawing. But it goes even further back to the whole thing that Mark and I was talking about way back in university days. It's not that long ago. Of every, for instance, with academic documents, as you know, with visual meta at the back of the document, it says everything you need to know to cite it, where all the headings are, what all the glossary terms are. Everything is just written there in plain language. All objects should be able to have that, because then you can go from an entirely this environment to an entirely that environment. I mean, I want to be able to have an AI of Plato in the environment with all the limitations of AI. Let's not go into that, or this or that, but it has to be open. And that is why we're using JSON, because it's literally just a list of stuff. And I'm hoping, and I'm talking to the other Ken Perlin, that at some point, maybe Fabien's environments and the things you guys are building, we can send things back and forth. You know, Dene's, thank you for the thumbs up. Dene's the next with art objects is really important too, because she wants them to have the real world behaviors, like a ball should be able to bounce and have a sound attached to it, which is a really basic real world thing. But think about all the other things that they can have. And that goes to Jonathan's issue of standardized language. Something has to be standardized, no matter how I will fight it for fun. So on that note, thank you all for today. Any final comments or questions, or should we just say Fabien is a genius and leave it at that? We will leave it at that. Thank you very much for today, everyone. And thank you for your incredible work, Fabien.